This table is for family, not you! Then enjoy your wedding without me.
If Evelyn leaves, we all leave.
Claire, what did you do?
When my sister pulled my chair away and said, "This table is for family," I did not argue. I simply picked up my purse and walked toward the exit. But before I reached the ballroom doors, Grandma stood. Then my aunt stood. Then my cousins. Within seconds, 23 guests were leaving behind me, and the groom stared at my sister and demanded, "Claire, what did you do?" "Hello, my name is Evelyn Carter. I am 34 years old, and until my younger sister's wedding, I believed silence was the price I had to pay to keep my family together. I was wrong. Sometimes silence does not protect a family. Sometimes it protects the person who is destroying it. My sister Claire had always known how to fill a room. She was beautiful, charming, and talented at making every story revolve around her. When we were children, people called her spirited. When she became an adult, they called her ambitious. But I knew another side of her. The side that remembered every weakness and used it when she wanted control. I was 6 years older. After our father died when I was 22, I became the dependable one. I helped Mom pay the mortgage. I drove Claire to college interviews. I edited her applications and sent her money when she said she could not afford Kep's books. I never kept score. She was my sister. Years later, I built a small event planning company in Columbus, Ohio. It started at my kitchen table with one laptop and a borrowed printer. By the time Claire became engaged to Daniel Brooks, I had 12 employees and a reputation for rescuing complicated weddings. Daniel was kind, steady, and completely in love with her. At their engagement dinner, he told me Claire said I was the person she trusted most. That nearly made me laugh. 2 weeks later, Claire called me. "I want you to plan the wedding," she said. "Not as a vendor. As my sister." That sentence should have warned me. She wanted a June wedding at Hawthorne Manor, a restored estate outside the city. The venue alone cost more than most houses in our old neighborhood. Claire and could cover part of it, but after deposits, flowers, food, and photography, they were almost $60,000 short. Mom called me crying. "Your father always dreamed of walking both his girls down the aisle," she said. "We cannot give Claire that now. Please help us give her this." So I did. I paid the outstanding balance through my company and told Claire it was my wedding gift. I also negotiated discounts, coordinated the vendors, and spent 6 months solving problems she created. Nothing was ever enough. She changed the flowers 3 times. She fired a photographer because he would not make her look 10 years younger. She accused my assistant of flirting with Daniel because he asked whether the groom wanted coffee. Then, 1 month before the wedding, Claire removed me as maid of honor. She did it by text. The message said, "Daniel's sister should have the role. It will look better in photos. Hope you understand." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I wrote, "Of course. It is your day." That was what everyone expected from me. Understanding, patience, money, silence. But something strange happened the following week. My accountant, Priya, called me into her office. She had noticed 2 reimbursement requests connected to the wedding. One was for $12,000 in specialty lighting. The other was for $8,000 in imported linens. Neither vendor existed. Both payments had been transferred to a company called Rose Consulting. "Did you approve these?" Priya asked. I had not. The approvals carried my electronic signature, but the login came from Claire's apartment. Months earlier, I had let her use a tablet connected to my business account so she could review seating charts. She had apparently saved my password. I felt cold all over. I wanted to call her immediately, but Priya stopped me. "Do not accuse her until we know what this is," she said. "If someone forged your authorization, we need evidence." That was the beginning of my investigation. We traced Rose Consulting to a mailbox rental under Claire's name. Bank records showed the money had been used for luxury purchases, a spa weekend, and payments toward a new SUV. $20,000 stolen from my company. I still did not confront her. Part of me wanted to believe there was an explanation. Maybe Claire planned to repay it. Maybe she thought the wedding gift included access to my business funds. Those excuses sounded ridiculous, but betrayal often makes intelligent people negotiate against the truth. Then Grandma Ruth called me. My grandmother was 81, sharp-minded, and impossible to manipulate. She asked why her table assignment had changed from the front row to the back corner. I opened the newest seating chart. Claire had moved Grandma, 3 widowed aunts, and several cousins away from the family table. In their places were wealthy clients of Daniel's father, and 2 social media personalities Claire barely knew. My own name was still at the family table, but someone had written a note beside it, "Move if needed." Grandma heard the silence on the phone. "What else has she done?" she asked. I told her about the money. Grandma did not gasp. She did not defend Claire. She said, "Bring me the proof." The following Sunday, I showed her everything. When she finished reading, she took off her glasses and looked at me. "Your sister has confused kindness with permission," she said. And the rest of us helped teach her that. She wanted me to report Claire immediately. I refused. Not because Claire was innocent, but because the wedding was 7 days away. I did not want Daniel publicly humiliated for something he might not know about. I decided I would speak to Claire privately after the rehearsal dinner. I prepared a folder containing the transfers, login records, and receipts. I also drafted a repayment agreement. If she signed it and returned the money, I would keep the matter within the family. That was my final act of mercy. Claire answered it with another betrayal. The night before the wedding, I heard her speaking to Mom behind a closed door at the manor. "Once the wedding is over, we will tell Daniel that Evelyn caused the budget problems," Claire said. "He already thinks she controls everything. If she complains about the money, I will say it was payment for planning services." A mom whispered, "What if she has records?" The Claire laughed. "She will not do anything. Evelyn would rather swallow glass than embarrass the family." I stood in the hallway holding the folder against my chest. Then Mom said something that hurt even more. "You are probably right. She always forgives you." I walked away before they opened the door. That night I did 3 things. First, I gave copies of the evidence to Priya and my attorney. Second, I instructed every vendor that any new charge required my personal approval. Third, I placed the original folder in my car. I still hoped Claire might show remorse. But I was no longer willing to protect her from consequences. The wedding ceremony itself was beautiful. Daniel cried when Claire walked down the aisle. For a few minutes, I let myself forget everything. I watched my little sister exchange vows beneath white roses I had helped choose. And I remembered the girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. I wondered when we had lost each other. At the reception, I checked the kitchen, solved a microphone problem, and helped Grandma reach the ballroom. By the time I approached the family table, the first course had already been served. My name card sat between Grandma and Aunt Susan. I pulled out my chair. Claire appeared beside me in her wedding gown. She was smiling, but her eyes were hard. "You cannot sit here," she said. I thought she was joking. "My card is here." As she lifted the card and tore it in half. "This table is for family, not you." The conversations around us stopped. I looked at Mom. She lowered her eyes. I looked at Claire again. "Why are you doing this?" She leaned closer. "Because you spent this whole year acting like this wedding belonged to you. I want one night without you reminding everyone that you paid for things." I had never told a single guest what I paid. "Where should I sit?" I asked. She pointed toward a small table near the servers where 2 off-duty vendors were eating. "There, if they have space." Someone behind me whispered my name. I could feel dozens of eyes watching, waiting for me to argue or cry. Instead, I pushed the chair neatly beneath the table. "All right," I said. I picked up my purse and walked away. I had taken only 6 steps when I heard a chair move behind me. "Grandma Ruth stood, Evelyn," she said. "Wait for me?" A Claire blinked. "Grandma, sit down." A grandma folded her napkin and placed it beside her untouched plate. A family table that excludes the woman who held this family together is not a family table. Aunt Susan stood next. Then Aunt Linda. Uncle Mark pushed back his chair. My cousins rose one after another. Their spouses followed. Even relatives who did not know the whole story understood what they had just witnessed. Within seconds, 23 people were standing. The sight was almost unreal. One long table emptied, while Claire remained at its center in white silk, surrounded by torn pieces of my name card. Daniel crossed the ballroom toward us. "Why is everyone leaving?" he asked. No one answered. He looked at the empty chairs, then at me, then at his bride. "Claire," he said, "what did you do?" She immediately began crying. "Evelyn is making everything about herself again." I said nothing. Grandma to Iv removed Evelyn from the family table after Evelyn paid for most of this wedding. Daniel's face changed. "Paid for it? Claire told me your mother used your father's insurance money." Mom finally looked up. "There was no insurance money," she said quietly. Claire grabbed Daniel's hand, but he pulled away. "How much did Evelyn pay?" I told him. The room became silent again. Then Claire made the mistake that ended everything. She pointed at me and shouted, "She can afford it. She has always acted superior because of that company. 20,000 here, 60,000 there. What difference does it make to her?" Daniel stared at her. "What do you mean 20,000? Claire froze. I felt something inside me become completely calm. I opened my purse and took out my car keys. "The evidence is outside," I said. "Claire used my account to transfer $20,000 into a shell company. She forged my approval and planned to blame me after the wedding." Daniel shook his head. "No, Claire would have told me." "She bought the SUV with part of it," I said. He looked toward the window, where Claire's new vehicle was visible beneath the courtyard lights. Claire began speaking quickly. She said it was a misunderstanding. Then she said the money was a gift. Then she said I had promised it. Every version contradicted the one before it. Daniel asked to see the records. I brought him the folder. We moved into a private library beside the ballroom. Daniel, Claire, Mom, Grandma, and I sat around a polished oak desk. My attorney joined us by video call and explained the transfers. Daniel studied the documents in silence. At last, he asked Claire, "Did you forge her signature?" Claire wiped her cheeks. "I was going to pay it back after we received the wedding gifts." That was her confession. Daniel took off his wedding ring and placed it on the desk. "We have been married for less than 3 hours," he said, "and I have already learned that you lied about the wedding, stole from your sister, and planned to make her take the blame." Claire screamed that I had ruined her marriage. I finally answered, "No, Claire. I paid for your wedding. You ruined your marriage." Daniel left the room. His parents followed him. The reception ended without a first dance, cake cutting, or farewell. Guests quietly collected their belongings, while Claire sat in the library blaming everyone except herself. The next morning, she sent me 47 messages. Some threatened me. Some begged me. Some accused me of jealousy. Mom called and asked me not to involve the police. "She is your sister," she said. "And I was her sister when she stole from me," I replied. For the first time in my life, I did not rescue Claire. My company filed a formal complaint. Because the evidence was clear and Claire had no previous record, her attorney negotiated a plea agreement. She received probation, community service, and a court order to repay the full amount. I also sued for the money she had taken and the expenses caused by her fraud. The SUV was sold. Her luxury purchases were returned. Every month, a payment arrived at my office. Not because she loved me, but because a judge required it. Daniel filed for an annulment. I did not celebrate that. He was a good man who discovered on his wedding day that the person beside him had built their future on lies. Mom did not speak to me for almost 2 months. Then one evening, she came to my house carrying a box. Inside were old photographs, me helping Claire ride a bicycle, me holding her hand on her first day of school, me standing at my high school graduation with Claire on my shoulders. Mom began to cry. "I kept asking you to forgive her, because it was easier than asking her to change," she said. "I made your strength into an obligation. I am sorry. It was not enough to repair everything, but it was honest. We started there. Claire and I remained apart. 6 months later, she wrote me a letter. It contained no excuses. She admitted she had resented needing me and had mistaken my generosity for weakness. She said the sight of the family leaving the table followed her everywhere. I did not write back immediately. Forgiveness, I learned, does not mean reopening the door before someone has changed. It does not erase consequences. And it does not require you to return to the seat where you were humiliated. 1 year after the wedding, Grandma turned 82. We held her birthday dinner at a small Italian restaurant. No chandeliers, no photographers, no seating chart designed to impress strangers. When I arrived, Grandma had saved a chair beside her. She touched the back of it and smiled. "This seat is for family." I sat down. Claire was not there. She had not yet earned her way back into those gatherings. Maybe one day she would. Maybe she would not. That choice would depend on her actions, not on our guilt. As dinner began, I looked around at the people who had stood for me when I was finally ready to walk away. For years, I believed keeping peace meant staying seated while someone took away my dignity. But that wedding taught me the truth. The strongest revenge was not destroying my sister. It was refusing to let her destroy me. And the moment I left the table where I was not respected, I finally found the family that was willing to stand.